It is 8:01 on a Saturday morning. I'm first warning meteorologist Eric Burris. This is Coffee Talk. We get together 7 days a week, chat about what's going on in the world of weather. Hopefully not only getting your day started off on an educated note, but hopefully as well on a brighter note. I hope you're having a great start to the day. Top two things we're watching is what? Is that right? A change of fall? Yeah, could we have a change for fall? It may not be quite what you're wanting, but we'll take whatever victory we've got. We'll talk about that. And what's next for Fiona? How is the storm doing this morning while you were sleeping? Hurricane hunters have been investigating. We will take a live look at the data and, of course, what it could mean for our friends and neighbors living in Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti. But first, let's get outside and see what's doing on our Tower Cam network. There is plenty of clouds. Alan says, foggy in Apopka. Good morning to you, Mr. Allen. Trina, good morning to you. Nikki, good morning to you. Leaving for a hurricane cruise today should be interesting. Well, hopefully you're not going into the hurricane. If you are, I think that there are actually bigger issues that should be discussed, right? Here's a look at temperatures across central Florida. Of course, we're cycling them on the bottom of your screen, but there you go. Low to mid 70s. It feels comfortable. It may be a little more humid today than what we were dealing with yesterday morning. Still a mighty fine start to the day. Let's take a look at first warning live Doppler radar, and we are tracking some showers along our coastal areas. First things first, let's come into Volusia County, where we're watching some rains around the Ponce Inlet. You can see there, most of it is staying offshore, but radar says maybe a sprinkle or two around South Daytona. And then up here into Flagler County, another downpour coming in. It's not like the end of the world or anything, but there is at least a little bit of rain that we have to deal with. So just something to keep in mind, okay? All right, where do we go from here? Let's take a look at our 12-hour forecast. This morning, beautiful weather. If it's raining on you, don't worry. It's not going to be an all-morning thing. Eventually, we'll be getting the rains. Lunchtime, building clouds, mid-80s, at sunshine helping to keep those temperatures warm. And then we'll get to about 88 degrees or so. We'll get those thunderstorms starting to fire up, and most of us are going to be getting wet today. Yeah, 70% once again. Now that said, one point of note, and this is an important point. Today is kind of the last really wet day. Then we start to bring that rain chance down little by little by little over these next few days. And interestingly enough, would you believe me if I told you Fiona was partially to blame for that? Yeah, it is. Let's talk about Fiona at first, and because I want to take a look at recon data. Hurricane hunters are inside. There are two missions that are inside right now. And in addition to just the fact that they're investigating, the intermediate advisory went out. Winds are still at 60 miles an hour. And let me just run that. Winds are at 60 miles an hour. Just want to look. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that that's... Give me just a second. That drop off there on the Air Force mission, I just want to make sure that that's not suspect. Hold on one second. Pressure. That's what that must be. Oh, it's just a drop off in data. Okay, I see it there. Okay. Yeah, that around 8 a.m., that red drop on the graph, I just want to make sure that it didn't find like sub 990 pressure or something. So what this is, I'm monitoring two live recon missions inside of Fiona. And what I'm watching for is I'm watching for pressures to see if they're dropping. Ignore that chunk of data, that's bad data. But the official pressure is at 1,000 millibars. So I'm watching to see these graph numbers to see if any of them drop below. Thus far, they have not. So at least at the moment, Fiona has not gotten significantly stronger. All right, here's the 8 a.m. advisory, and winds are still at 60 miles an hour, pressure holding at 1,000 millibars. But you can just look at the satellite presentation and tell that this storm system is getting better and better organized, right? It looks that way. It looks like it has kind of shifted a little further to the south. But you know, as these things, basically it's kind of a tilted cyclone. The surface low and the mid and upper low are there, kind of tilted just a little bit. Now let me read to you what the intermediate advisory states, okay? Air Force Reserve hurricane hunters find Fiona a little further south. Hurricane watch issued for portions of the Dominican Republic. Now, hurricane watches also have been posted for Puerto Rico, and this is definitely the big focal point. We're going to, I promise you, we'll get back to our local forecast, but I want to spend the lion's share of our time on this just because tropics are definitely a point of concern for people. And especially here in Central Florida, we have such a population of folks from the Caribbean. So I want to make sure that that's all covered, okay? So there's the storm system itself. Hurricane hunters did find the storm system a little further south. One thing that we're doing is we're monitoring both hurricane hunter missions, and you kind of see them zigzagging, NOAA there in blue and the United States Air Force in red. The storm system itself is looking healthy. It just is. Here's a look at the radar data from Fiona, and you can kind of see it as it moves into the Caribbean, passing by Guadalupe, Dominica, working south of the Virgin Islands, but it's going to be getting tighter, we think. And I wouldn't be surprised if this tries to become a hurricane later today. Now, I don't remember who we were discussing, and they had family that was getting married in Puerto Rico. You can kind of see there has been some squally weather, and that certainly will continue. All right, with this advisory, as mentioned, the folks over in the Dominican Republic now have a hurricane watch issued. So what's the difference between hurricane watches and hurricane warnings? Hurricane watch, highlighted in pink there, means that hurricane conditions are possible within 48 hours' time. That also includes Puerto Rico. Those areas are under tropical storm warnings. That means that tropical storm conditions expected, hurricane conditions are possible, okay? So the Hurricane Center kind of hedging their bets here and essentially saying we very well may see a developing hurricane before it makes landfall there. So here's a look at kind of the overall forecast path. Over the course of the day today, tonight, tomorrow morning, we think that it's going to stay south of Puerto Rico, but certainly bring squally weather. After that, the Dominican Republic getting a hurricane. Again, this is, I think that this is going to have a little bit of an adjustment at 11 o'clock. I really do. Then it starts to turn more to the right, more to the right, more to the right, and stays safely off of our East Coast. Now, one of the things that I want to point out is that these tropical systems really do control their surroundings. So even if the storm is this far away from us, which let me measure it just for the sake of discussion here. If it follows the path, it would be 544 miles off the coastline of Palm Beach County. It could be as close as 300, it could be as far out as 764, okay? But even with that, we can expect subsidence in our area, because what is going to end up happening is as it's spinning counterclockwise, okay, it's going to be dragging all this moisture away from Florida. And that's why, and let me just show you the 7-day forecast. We'll step into our local for a moment, and then we'll go back to tropics in a moment. But that's why you're going to see here on the 7-day forecast, look at those rain chances. Tuesday, 50%, Wednesday, 30%, Thursday, first day of fall, 20% chance of rain, Friday, 20% chance of rain. So as Fiona passes east of us, that's kind of what we're looking at. Isn't that interesting? All right, let's talk about winds. Okay, I think that this is going to be a major kind of player. So for Puerto Rico, the GFS, interestingly enough, now I've not looked at this yet, but the GFS has made some tweaks here. Let me just rack this around. Yeah, wow, the GFS is going ballistic with intensification. All right, so that's the GFS. Let me get that dialed up for you. Okay, so here's the GFS model, and let's just go through time here. Okay. look at this. According to this, Sunday 5 a.m., what you're seeing on the GFS model, you know, it's so interesting. What you're seeing on the GFS model is winds over 100 miles an hour. You know, let's do it this way. Let me just do it this way. We'll just go, we're going to do some raw models instead of trying to make it all pretty. All right? And we're going to switch over to wind. Wind gust. Yeah, all right. So here's the model data as it stands, and that's the GFS. So right there, the browns that you're seeing, okay, the browns that you're seeing, that's winds of 76 miles an hour, kind of weakening a little bit as it passes overhead. That's 15Z, that's 11 a.m., and then kind of emerging back out, okay? So that's what we're looking at here, is the storm system making landfall with winds, you know, 70, 80 miles an hour, then re-emerging and then bombing out. You see those reds? That's 100 plus mile per hour winds, and that's the GFS recurving. What about the European? Let's take a look at the European model. Let me shift this around. And you know, and these are, when you see us on TV, we try to have this all prepared for you professionally, right? But with Coffee Talk, what you get is a little more of an off-the-cuff deal, so bear with me as I kind of try and plot this. Okay. European wind gusts, and it's very interesting to me how the European and the GFS, at least in the short term, are quite different. Bear with me, I'm just tweaking the graphic here. All right, perfect. All right, here's the European model. Okay, European is a little weaker, trying to intensify it up to, you see the 80 mile per hour winds, so it would be south of Puerto Rico as a hurricane, though there would be some hurricane force gusts possible on Puerto Rico, especially on the south side, Ponce, for example. Then it kind of rides along the northern shoreline there of the Dominican Republic, starts to develop, and then starts to kind of recurve on out from there. So very interesting stuff. But again, you know, the one thing that the GFS is saying, and this makes sense if I'm honest with you, that's the GFS at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. If there's one thing that GFS is saying, is that it's wanting to recurve a little sooner. And if this storm system is in fact strengthening like it looks like it is, then we could see a sooner recurvature, okay? I'm just getting some new data from the hurricane hunters. Nothing. Okay, so 1,003 millibars. So, you know, it looks like what's happening, at least in terms of the storm system itself, what it looks like to me is that it's developing a new center of circulation, and this is going to be the one that probably starts to develop out. Okay, so good job by the National Hurricane Center issuing those hurricane watches. I wouldn't be surprised if we get this to become a hurricane later today, okay? Still watching data from the two missions. Let's wait for that to load. It's got to go get all that data. It's thinking. There we go. Just want to see. Yeah, all right. So it looks like the NOAA flight on their most recent core pass found a pressure getting down to 1,000 millibars or so. So that's not any stronger than it was. Okay, so at least for now, we've not seen any strengthening, but it does look like the storm system is trying to get going, okay? So, any questions on the tropics as it stands right now? Yes, there's a lot of content here for sure. All right, what about the ensembles, you may ask? Let's do this. Give me a second to get this tweaked. Again, I've not gotten these tweaked for TV, so forgive me. Bear with me. Okay, that's done. Let me get the other one. Forgive me. Again, these are things that I just did not get a chance to do before Coffee Talk, so thank you for your patience. I appreciate it very much. Delete all pauses. This is the graphics work that happens behind the scenes that you just never see. There, and there. Okay. All right, so let's look at the ensembles and the computer models. Okay, so first off, tropical computer models. They are tightly in agreement with the overall idea from the National Hurricane Center with that recurvature. There are the tropical models. Now, do notice that if we come back here at the beginning, if you just look at the beginning, though, the computer models were basing it off of the 5 a.m. positioning, which obviously they found it a bit further south. So keep that in mind. But there's the computer models. What about the ensemble plots? Here's a look at the GFS ensembles, all right? South of Puerto Rico. Now, you can see that at least half of those ensemble members do try to bring this ashore over Puerto Rico, all right? Then from there, kind of passing near the Turks and Caicos and then starting to spread and recurve. And, you know, just about all of those ensemble members are trying to, you know, recurve it and keep it out to sea nicely. That's the models certainly behaving. So there's the GFS ensembles as they stand. European ensembles, let's take a look. And if you're not familiar with what we're talking about, an ensemble is the model. So you've got your tropical spaghetti models. Perfect. The ensembles are the global GFS and the global European, kind of looking at the system and making tweaks. And I mentioned this to a friend of mine. He was like, explain to me how the ensembles work. And it's like, think about politics. You and I sit in a room and we could talk politics. And maybe we're pretty close, but maybe we're a little different. Maybe we're a lot different. We're all humans, we're all people, but it's just a little different. So each one of those L's is a version of the European. That's why we call them the ensembles. And it gives us an idea of confidence. So for example, tightly clustered, pretty confident. Pretty, right? Like the European is pretty confident that Fiona will stay south of Puerto Rico. Where, though, does it go into the Dominican Republic? That is a little bit more of a question mark. And you can kind of see the European really does spread with time. The vast majority of the ensemble members do recurve it and keep it out to sea. There are some ensemble members, though, that still do try to paint on kind of a closer pass to us. So what you end up having, the vast majority of them, stronger Fiona. Stronger Fiona wants to recurve, right? Then you've got some of these weaker members over here. Weaker goes west. And so that's why you've kind of got that disparagement there. But the Hurricane Center has continued to kind of ride the idea of a more recurving nature to this storm. And frankly, you know, I think that that's fine. We'll have to watch, but, you know, I think that that's pretty good. All right. Looks like it's going over Puerto Rico and missing the mountain of the Dominican Republic. We'll have to see, right? It's definitely seeming to try and strengthen, but that's why I continue to check the recon data, because it's looking like it's wanting to, but it hasn't yet. You know, we've not read, and we've got 2 recon missions in there right now, and we've not read anything stronger. Carolyn, do they just tweak the initial data, or do they all tweak the algorithms? Are you talking about the Hurricane Center? So when the Hurricane Center puts out their intermediate advisory, they just update the position. The cone is unchanged. So it's already further south than the forecast cone had alluded to earlier. I think that's what you're asking. Yukon, politicians are just flip side of the same coin. That's all I will say. Well, and we don't talk politics on Coffee Talk, but that's the idea, you know, is when, and that was the way that I kind of tried to explain it to my friend, is it's like we're all sitting here discussing, but you may have a different opinion. We're all entitled to that, but you know, you kind of get that idea, right? All right. Pickle Juice on YouTube is asking, is this a part of the LRC? So it is. I think that this is the Florester. most of the cycles of the floor easter started in the Gulf and recurved, but the one thing that I will point out is that every version of the floor easter bombed off of Florida's east coast. So, the first low developed in the Gulf, crossed over Florida, but it didn't really get going until it was east of Florida. There's the floor easter on November 6th, and you can really see it firing up off the southeast coast. So we knew that it would love that kind of southeast coast area. There it was, January 13th. We knew that it was going to find that piece of energy east of the United States. But when we highlighted it, we did highlight it as being kind of a focal point for a potential Florida impact, because most of the versions did impact from the Gulf crossing the peninsula. But we did highlight the East Coast as just a possibility. So it's timing out correctly and it's finding its energy, but it's not crossing the peninsula, which, at least right now, that's the thought process, which I don't think anybody is upset about. At least I'm not. How much time? Roger, Roger. All right. I'm preaching at noonish, Silver Springs, Christine says. We will be outdoors and doing a baptism. Will the weather be okay? All right, let's take a look at Futurecast real fast. And I apologize that it's taken me this long. I only have a couple of minutes. By the way, thank you for what you do. All right, here's a look at Futurecast. This is beta Futurecast. It seems to be the only one that has a decent handle on things. So here's 1 o'clock, and you can see we're actually doing well. Here's 2, 3, 4 o'clock, and we seem to be doing well. It's not until after. It looks like it's going to be more late day activity, okay, that we get those showers and those thunder showers. So preaching around 1 o'clock, 12, 1 o'clock, you're doing fine, all right? All right, so again, Fiona expected to pass safely off of our east coast, okay? That's the good news. Watch it recurving and staying out to sea. As it does so, watch our 7-day forecast, my friends. Watch that 7-day forecast get drier and drier Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, looking better and better and better. And by the way, very, very quickly, the BSR, let me just dial this up real fast. The BSR showing a little something off of our east coast. I want to put it on your calendars now. All right, that is September 19th, which is around September 5th, 6th, 7th. Around September 5th, 6th, 7th, the BSR is saying that there may be something recurving out off of our east coast, okay? Did I say September? I meant October 5th, 6th, 7th, okay? All right, something to watch. Be the sunshine in someone else's day. Thank you so much for hanging out for Coffee Talk. I will see you guys and gals on TV in just a couple of minutes. Yeah, I said September. I meant October. October 5th, 6th, 7th. Okay.